Welcome to Fantasy Thinker. I'm Jared, and today I am going to talk about something that I've had on my mind for quite a bit now, um, and it's partially regarding Song of the Mysteries by Jenny Wirtz, a masterwork of this level here that requires attention, active participation, and patience to really enjoy what the work has to offer. It's taken me a couple of weeks to get into the right headspace to attempt a review, and that's not what this is today. I failed. um, I really needed to let this sink in. I needed to talk about it with my peers and the author herself to allow some proper digestion of the work and complete dissemination of the information contained within is not something that would come to me in a flash. Not only do I have to go back through this weighty tome, but I have to reflect upon a whole series of these weighty tomes that go back 10 other volumes and 3 years of reading and discussion. Uh, so that is the main crux of what I'm speaking about today: discussion. And this is where my digression begins and may not end. um, so I apologize in advance. But this is the first time I've finished such a momentous series where, through discussion with others, I've dissected and took notes of every part of this long journey. I've written a journal. I have a journal here written of abbreviated events, and we all have a video journal of in-depth discussions. I began to ponder upon what effect this level of dissemination had upon my reading journey. Did it improve my reading pleasure or detract from it? Most likely, the answer is somewhere in the middle, a shifting list of pros and cons that remain malleable by necessity. Um, Prior to read alongs and YouTube book discussions, I would read a book or a series and finish it with barely a thought as to how the beginning related to the end. Sometimes I would have a really intense aesthetic reaction in the form of like some epiphany or something, where I realized that what I thought I was reading was beyond my initial assessment of the book. My viewpoints changed upon completion. Sometimes I realized that I did not read what was on the page, but instead inserted my own biases on the words and maybe came to conclusions unrelated to the text. Um, so discussions have allowed for outside input to inform and influence my own inner dynamic. I am no longer reading in a vacuum. Is this a better means of reading enjoyment or worse? And I don't think I can actually answer that question because I'm not really sure if I know. Mainly because I only have like situational biases, my own biases, to base my opinion on here. There's nothing empirical here. Um, but let me present these situations and we'll see if they make any sense. All right. There's three series here that I'm going to talk about today. That they're ones that I'm very familiar with, and so although I may have mentioned some other stuff, but we'll start with the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever. These books I first read as a young man and found them fascinating, yet difficult to get through. My language skills were not yet of a proficiency to match the text. Some of the deeper meanings of the passages were beyond my ken, and some of the mature situations beyond my experience as a person. Still, I really enjoyed the fantastical settings and ideas in these books. They stuck with me. And later in life, I revisited the first 6 books just prior to the release of the last 4. And I was amazed at the depth of character and themes running through it. I was older. I obtained some skills in writing and analysis, and I had a better understanding of human nature just through living, you know, through experience. Uh, so I realized that these books were written for a more mature, seasoned audience. Not that my younger self couldn't enjoy them, but my older self would have a greater perspective on what these books were trying to achieve. I would then move on to searching for something else along these lines. Enter Malazan Book of the Fallen. This series challenged me in many ways. It took me a very long time to read the series the first time, about 7 years to get through 10 books. So I read 1 or 2 books a year, taking my time with them, trying to let them really sink in. And why? Why did I do that? Any other book that came out or that I came across during these pre-COVID times, I would read, move on to the next one, and keep going. With these, I started questioning what I was reading. I started to wonder, what am I missing? Or, rather than what was I missing out on, which every other book was like, what am I missing out on? Because I want to know what happened. But there was something else with these. I was like, what was I missing in the books themselves? So I finished all the available Malazan books, including the Elsamon books, and I questioned what I understood about it. And it was the first time I realized that there were other things happening on the page than what the narrative was strictly telling me on my own. It was the first time I was determined to reread a series immediately after finishing it. And it was the first time I got something new out of rereading something, not because of a lack of life experience, as with the Covenant books, but because the narrative itself invited such re-examining. It was built that way, just like many books that we read in the classic literary tradition. Except, in my humble opinion, better, because this literary work has dinosaurs with swords for arms. Anyway, Malazan led me to seek out others' opinions, the opinions of strangers, something no other work had done. I wanted to see if other folks felt the same. I wanted to see if anyone had done any research on this. That led me to eventually Wikipedia, just random search stuff, right? Which led me to Donaldson's essay about epic fantasy as necessary literature, which then led me to YouTube, which then led me to the concept of read-alongs. Right. So, enter the Wars of Light and Shadow. I saw an interview with Janie Wirtz, and when I heard what I heard, led me to believe that this could be yet another work that I could hold the same kind of reverence for that I do these other two. And so I read the first book and I loved it, and I wrote and filmed a review of it. And from there, I was invited to join a read-along for the rest of the series. The read-along has intrinsically changed the way I approach the books that I read for those read-alongs, but none more so than this long, epic fantasy series with deep thematic elements and high literary acumen. This led me to look into every aspect of the writing in order to bring something to the table when the discussion happened. The discussions brought out more details and more insights into the work, and then took it to another level when the author herself was involved. So I was getting so much input. I started to wonder if those insights were beginning to detract from my own enjoyment of the story. And after much thought, I I realized that was not the case. I was enjoying the act of reading just as much as I always did. I was enjoying having an additional impetus to continue reading, even if I wasn't in the mood. Um, I've always been, I've always enjoyed the challenge of an assignment. I actually enjoyed college for that reason. Um, and of course, I really loved having others to talk to about the things I've read. And I've made a few good friends through this process, and I plan to keep them. um, but the one thing that I will admit to missing is the slow process of figuring things out for myself. Cheers. So, for a few, decades, that was what my reading journey consisted of, and it was a solitary one. There were some exceptions. Occasionally, my brother would read a book that I was reading, um, and of course, the exceptions of reading for school, um, which which I enjoyed when I was going to night classes. Uh, but when I first started reading for fun, I was reading fantasy. I had no aspirations for my favorite genre beyond entertainment. Fantasy wasn't taken seriously by any media that I was privy to at the time, or not even really acknowledged. I wondered, I wondered about the Covenant series because to me this felt very deep and literary to my young mind. But I figured it was just like the exception to the rule. Then I went to university to learn about this, literary stuff. And I read a lot of great stuff. But what I learned was there was a bunch of cultivated nonsense going around. These classics and literary books I was told are the greatest and was asked to study were indeed great books. But to my mind, they weren't any better than Donaldson's stuff. And when Malazan came along, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was right. Fantasy literature got a bad rap. So, anyway, I'm digressing from my digression, so apologies. The point is, I started to wonder about how I would have reacted to the Wars of Light and Shadow if I didn't have my hand held, figuratively, by the read along. I was given expectations. I was informed to read on and find out in regards to certain questions brought up in discussion. I was exposed to the theories of others and privy to the personal insights of the author. These forewarning triggers had nothing to do with how I absorbed the text or how I appreciated the prose, but they did temper self-discovery on some level. Is that a bad thing? I recently had some discussions on the Covenant series with someone new to the series, and I wonder, am I doing the same hand holding for them with regards to that? And I start to wonder, for anybody reading Malazan for the first time, is the bombardment of booktube content also too much? And is it is it inhibiting that self-discovery of stuff? So I don't have the answers here. These are questions that I've just been wondering about, and I'm not even sure if there is an answer. But the thing is, I thoroughly enjoyed my time reading this series and really enjoyed all the discussion I had with the friends I made along the way. So I wouldn't give that up for anything, and I plan to keep the discussion train going. It's too much fun. So that's where my thoughts are on this. I wonder what your thoughts are about read-alongs in general, and I wonder how you feel about absorbing texts on your own as opposed to having others read it with you and having their opinions, um, influence your ideas on a book, for good or bad. And I wonder um, if reading with somebody who has already read the books has any influence on your perception of the text you just read. So all these questions were brought up, and um, I I just all this stuff was on my mind. So I hope that this is you were able to take what I said here, think about it, and just you know uh, look to your own self discovery and find out if this is something that affects you as a reader. So that's all. I thought it was an interesting topic, and so maybe I'll get around to writing the review for Song of the Mysteries. All right. With all that said, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this little essay, and be good to each other. Bye now.